So now we're coming up to Frozen Hyrule. I guess it's kind of lazy to have the one of the levels literally be named after what the world is called, but I really do love the name Frozen Hyrule. Now, this level really disappointed me. Even though it's a shame because the music is just beautiful. Like, it has such a great atmosphere, but it really disappointed me, and you'll see why later on. Now, even though you can break the even though you can get the yellow force gems from Death Mountain by just like, I just don't understand why you can't just bomb them and there you go. The fire that the explosion clearly creates melts the ice. But like I look at the Temple of Darkness where you had one of the yellow force gems and you didn't necessarily have to throw an oil jar at it. You could just light it with the lamp and it was fine. But they don't apply that kind of generosity to these things. And like, if the frozen ones are functionally exactly the same as the ones that require the oil jars, and like these ones would require the oil jars as well. So really, is there a point to having them look different? They're the same thing. I mean, I'd have to wonder why the ice ones wouldn't just melt on Death Mountain though, but I guess that's the point. Now here is an example of bad level design, because the minute that you go in, the minute you go into this room, well, I call them rooms even though they're outside. The minute you go here, you are accosted by a whole bunch of enemies, so you immediately want to attack them. And you don't necessarily have to have the bow, one of the many items that you're overwhelmed with at once in one of the previous screens, because you can just throw Link over the fence and attack the enemies that way. The problem is that chances are you'll be so focused on immediately trying to attack. I really hate that shooting them with arrows doesn't always work, and sometimes they can just block with their shield, because the arrows is supposed to be like a perfect way to deal with those shield enemies. See? But anyways, the reason I didn't use the Quake Medallion is because I totally forgot that it was even in this level. Like, chances are you're not going to think to go into that cave and therefore get the Quake Medallion in the one place that you're going to use it for. And unfortunately, there's no way to keep the Quake Medallion until you would get to fight a whole bunch of different enemies again, because you are absolutely forced to break it when you want to pick up like something heavy or do an action involving all of the links at once. So basically you are forced to waste the Quake Medallion if you don't use it in that one area. That I just hate that it's a thing that you have to hold over your head. It would be great if it was something that could just be in an inventory, like a key. Why can't it just be collected like in a big key? I don't know why you have to hold those either. And the worst part was I was tricked, because I lifted that big rock thinking that there was at least a force gem under it, but there wasn't. So I just completely wasted my time. Now, I don't understand why the blizzards hurt you. I mean, if the logic is that it's cold, well, it's going to be cold regardless of whether there's a especially bad blizzard wind out. So you think that you would be slowly draining health throughout the entire level anyways, and the blizzard would just accentuate that. And you know, that would be a perfectly fine gimmick to make you feel like it's a cold level, because like, they already throw hearts at you anyways. If you're running low on hearts, you can just cut some grass, which inexplicably is still there and alive and thriving, even though the place was long since frozen over. At the very least, the grass should look dead, like it's in the autumn. So like, I guess that kind of gives the place its unique charm. It just seems annoying that the blizzard just attacked you multiple times in a row, and if you're outside, then there's nothing you can do about it. It's like you've been stun locked. By this point in the game, I've gotten used to figuring out where exactly the cracks in the walls are. They're the indentations in them, but it really should just have regular cracks. And I don't like having to wait for the blizzard to not be there anymore. Like, it just feels like it's pace breaking. But like this is an interesting concept. It's just that, like, you see a house in this area, but you never actually see anybody living in it. So the whole frozen Hyrule just feels dead and not lived in at all. Which sucks, because later on in the world, you're gonna find that, well, I don't know, there doesn't seem to be a reason why there should be nobody living in this place at all. Because, like, even in the other field areas of the game, like in the field, the first level in the game, the coast, stuff like that, you would always have some kind of NPCs living in there in a house somewhere. But here, there's just nothing, and I don't really see the need for it. It would have added some charm to this place, instead of just being a cold forest. More like a woodlands, really. And I really have to question why the leaves of the trees haven't completely fallen off from dying from the cold. Since this place has been frozen over ever since Fate 2 was released. So that was like how long ago? It's not like it was just recently frozen over, and therefore the leaves would still be on the trees and be covered in snow. And that's why the trees look their unique way. No, like, they should really just look like they're all dead trees, because that's how trees look in the winter. But that would have required making a whole new sprite, rather than simply recoloring the normal tree sprite. As you can see, this level has some backtracking to deal with. At the very least, it is pretty satisfying getting to burn everything that you can with the fire rod. I really love doing that in this game. The fire rod has like 2 different modes to it. You can press and hold the A button to just release this continuous strand of fire that's just a little bit in front of you. So it can be a fantastic short-range weapon, way better than the sword, which has surprisingly little reach. So if you're dealing with a mob of enemies, the fire rod is your friend, because not only does it have a great long-range attack, where if you just tap the A button, you'll send out a ball of fire, and like one for each link too, and it just keeps on going until it reaches the end of the level. I'm not sure why it doesn't move as fast as the fireball in Link to the Past though, where it just whooshed from one side of the screen to the other right away. Like, it seems unnatural to see the fireballs move that slowly. But at least they're really useful. Like if you're dealing with a whole mob of enemies, generally the fire rod is really great, because like the shield enemies aren't going to block fireballs. So you can just get revenge on those annoying soldiers for constantly blocking your attacks by just fire rodding them, which is great. I still don't like having to deal with these enemies though. Why are they even here? Like, I can understand that being in the Tower of Flames, because that's like the Tower of Hera, which had like these kinds of enemies in Link Between Worlds. But why are they here? They're just an annoyance for no reason. Now here, I thought that I needed the Roc's Feather to jump up from that water to progress upwards and get to the west where the spike wall was. But unfortunately that isn't actually the case. So I just wasted a whole bunch of time backtracking to get a Roc's Feather, go all the way back to that underwater cave, only for it to turn out that I had wasted my time. Like, why did they even put the Roc's Feather in this Like, why do they put items in the level that you're never going to use and put them alongside a whole bunch of items that you might actually want to use? So, like, one of the problems that this level has is overwhelming you with a whole bunch of different items at once, which is mainly a problem in single player. Like, you had 2 different times where there were just like 4 different items, and you don't know which one you're going to need when you progress. And see, it's great for dealing with mobs of enemies. And, best of all, there's no limit. So like, you can just hold the A button forever, and the fire will never run out. Granted, I mean, it's a short range attack, so of course it doesn't have range. Again, like, the only problem is that you can get hurt by your own fire, which is really terrible. And speaking of terrible, I wandered through the entire level almost, trying to find where to put the moon pearl. So finally I remembered that there was a square-shaped patch of snow, and I figured, well, that's generally where you have to put those moon pearls, so sure. So that was annoying. And it took a while for me to see that the indentations in the walls were to the left and were on the left and right parts of the wall. So there's an unused image of the sword in the pause menu. It's actually shinier, lighter colored, and has slightly more detail, not as gray as the final version. Like, swords obviously generally look better in the media when they're white rather than just gray. And here that this is just annoying because how are you supposed to know which lever is the right one? Even on repeated playthroughs, it won't be that easy to remember. So it basically just forces you to waste a whole bunch of time. And like the bomb explosions are way too small for their own good. I'm sure in some other Zelda game, like having the bomb explode just to the left of that cave would have been enough to blow it open. I mean, bomb explosions are supposed to be bigger than that. And I really suffered from that problem in the next level. Like, I think I remember that, yeah, that's definitely the case. Like, in this game, you can upgrade the bomb to make it much bigger, and that would have really been helpful in this world. Instead, you're stuck with tiny bombs. It took a while for me to realize, oh, I can actually jump down the ledge here. Because most of the time in top-down Zelda games, you don't get to jump down ledges that are to the north of you. Because yeah, do I even need to show this off? It's the same boss. One of the weakest points of this game is that it just constantly repeats the same bosses over and over again. And I was expecting to have a lot more original bosses than this when I revisited this game. So if you're going into this game expecting every level to have a brand new boss, it doesn't necessarily have to be brand new for the whole franchise, but for the game at least, then you're gonna be disappointed. Because they just repeat the same bosses. Like, you have the boss from the coast being used as a mini-boss, and you're gonna see it. And you see it a whole bunch of different times. Like, this is just the exact same Knight of Hyrule boss, only now it has a whole bunch of pieces flying around it that you can just kill in one hit anyways. Like, the bosses are really the game's weak point because of how repetitive they are. Like, it's like Mario 3, where you constantly fight Boom Boom and it's the same boss every time. Or Mario 1, where it's the same boss every time. And it's especially weird for a Zelda game. I mean, I know that every level has to have a boss for some reason. And like, that's weird for Zelda because in Zelda you only have bosses at the ends of dungeons. And in this game, every level is basically considered to be a dungeon. So every level has to have a boss fight. But that means that it would take forever to make every single level have its own boss fight. But even then, like, you would expect there to be more original bosses than there are. It just makes fighting the bosses feel, like, kind of repetitive. Like, they could at least change things up, make them harder as you progress. Or at the very least, change the way that they're colored so that they look different. Like, it wouldn't have been too hard for them to change the colors of the bosses. Or at least not the ones that are color-coded according to which Link can attack it.